Today's topic is about letting go, which is a huge part of what I talk about. And I've talked about it before, and I'll talk about it again. And there's so many ways to move through this topic. But I think in one of our simplest metaphors we can use, we often can think of letting go like becoming more like the blue sky. That the blue sky at no point ever holds on, never creates an attachment with the clouds. It's never unhappy when it's cloudy. It's never particularly happy when it's sunny. And this may sound very bland and neutral, but in the human sense, it's incredibly freeing because most of the time we're moving through spaces of contentment and discontentment. And that's all based off of our ego sense of what we want. If we want a blue sky, then we're happy when it's there and we're angry when it's not. And the reverse is true. And somebody is trying to turn their video on. I'm going to have to go turn some stuff off. So, as you relax into yourself and become more like the blue sky, it's just life is happening in front of you. And that's okay. And there's that quality of detachment, right? That's truly let go from whatever is unfolding in front of us. And people too often also confuse this as not caring, as not having an opinion. So I don't think we can be human beings and not keep having some level of opinion about things, even if it's a very simple, basic thing about what we want to eat. Right? Our stomach creates this urge inside us, says, I'm hungry. And so we're trying, oh, I'm feeling hungry. And so then we have certain opinions and, past memories that we pull out and say, well, I like burritos, right? It comes up in our head. This is not an invasive or problematic belief, but it's also not something you need to be attached to, right? It's just like we could like something else that's not burritos, or it could be tacos, or it could be fish sticks, I don't care. But the point is that there's such flexibility and ease in ourselves that we allow ourselves to kind of move from that natural urge, right, that natural hunger urge, to something else. Oftentimes, there's so much attachment just with our eating that we're always thinking about, what's going to make me feel good, as opposed to what's going to nourish me. The two should be the same, but they really aren't. And so we get attached to certain types of eating, and we certainly get attached through alcohol and other things, right, and sugar, right? These addictions are really problematic on a lot of levels that over time create significant suffering for a lot of people. And it's just a whole bunch of stuff that gets piled on top of simply being here now. And it gets piled as we continue to have these certain beliefs that hold on, this old pain that we're trying to avoid, that creates us to attempts to hold on to other situations to avoid pain. It gets rather elaborate very quickly. And this is why the spiritual path can, as far as a lot of the healing that goes on, can go on for some time. Sometimes some of my students, they'll be going through stuff and then they'll get like this big declarative statement like, I've healed all this. And I just smile and I appreciate that, because usually if you have, you don't have to declare it quite like that. Because typically, like in a couple months later, it's like the issue comes back. It's like, I thought I cleared all that. So there's a certain level of patience that we have with ourselves, because we have been taught in most of our cultures to hold on. That holding on is a necessary means of life, and that letting go is kind of antithetical to that idea, right? So what are we holding on to? We're holding on to usually feelings of safety. I was just talking about this in an earlier session, that safety as an idea is not interesting to us, but there's a certain feeling that we equate as a safe feeling, and we want to keep that one. And so we try to hold on to that one. And then this in itself is its own topic that I'm going to probably have to do a webinar about. It's like, what is safety? What is that feeling? And what does it mean to us? So anything that's associated with that sense of safety, if it's a threat to it, that's something to like push away. And that's not even letting go. It's just finally pushing away at something. Not necessarily violently, but there's definitely a lot of the pushing. And then, of course, the gathering together of things that we may think will make us feel safe. And there's just so many beliefs around what we need to make ourselves feel safe. Whether it's being attractive in a certain way to get other people's approval so that we emotionally feel good as that form of safety, that emotional safety. Whether it's gathering money and resources and food and houses and things, right? To have things that we think will keep us safe in some particular way. To keep ourselves intellectually safe, there are so much intellectual violence, let's call it, right? Where people are just arguing and bashing their heads against each other, figuratively in a sense, and not respecting each other's different opinions. Too often, it really is just all ego-based, and it's just so rare that you get to these conversations where somebody has a strong opinion that's coming from truth. Because that happens too, and most people can't hear the difference between the two, between truth and somebody just egoically trying to like enforce their will on somebody. So we feel so unsafe. And so we just keep holding on to more things and trying to set up more barriers and hold on to those barriers to keep out any things that may threaten us. This happens all the time in relationships. Letting go of relationships is a question I get all the time. It tends to be something that people find very difficult, except for those who tend to like be more superficial. I don't know if we're not superficial, but who just kind of lightly connect. So let's move away from that word to more just kind of a surface level, but not in a bad way, right? They just kind of lightly connect, and so there's never any particularly strong thing there, and so they kind of drift from thing to thing. Then it may not, relationship and letting go may not seem quite so hard, but usually for most people, once they start to connect in deeply to somebody else as a friend or a lover or what have you, or a mentor, right? There's all sorts of wonderful relationships, and I can't emphasize that enough. But then, there's a time when that relationship is ending and people don't want to let that go. Or people don't want to allow it to evolve, which means a certain type of relationship has to die before another can evolve out of it. So you might think of like the child, becoming the adult, and where the adult needs to let go of the child. Right? Now, this is a huge issue for a lot of parents. They can't let their child leave the child state. That's how they interact with them. So that relationship actually has to die. And so out of that can grow something else. Friendship. Another type of teacher-student relationship, between the child and the parent. It may be different than what the usual power dynamics are. I mean, it can be a whole bunch of different things. It can be a business partnership, but that can't arise if one person or both are trying to hold on to it. So I'm just kind of outlining overall these issues that we have with holding on, because that's really the thing we look at when we start talking about letting go. Letting go is the cessation of holding on. It's not actually an action for the most part. I mean, I think there's a certain level of action we kind of take to deal with our holding on, and that can be kind of felt as letting go. I don't conveniently have a great expression for that, but think about, I suppose, your hand. If you were holding like a fist, here's the holding on, just holding on really tight for years. If you stop trying to hold on initially, it just kind of keeps doing this because you've generated so much energy in there. And so for a while, it just kind of doesn't seem like it's doing anything. Well, I don't think I'm letting go, right? So maybe there's this kind of quality in our practice in our lives where we're kind of prying the hand open a little bit, to help that. But that's not as much of it as you think. Because usually what we're just doing is kind of waiting for the hand to let go finally, now that we're no longer sending energy that way. Another one of my favorite metaphors is the fan. Because when we have a fan plugged in, the thing keeps spinning for a while, even after you've unplugged it, right? There's so much energy that you put into it, it's just whirling around and around and around. And it doesn't stop immediately. And so there's this concern a lot of people have. It's like, well, I stopped doing this thing in my life. And yet the fan keeps going around and around. It'll stop. But, as it stops and it starts to grind to a halt, there's all sorts of discomfort that can come up with that. And whenever people feel discomfort, there's a tendency to think something is going wrong now. And so this is one of the things that halts that letting go, is when we start to feel things that are uncomfortable, which is part of the whole deal of why we hold on to so much stuff is we're trying to make ourselves feel comfortable, which typically actually does the reverse. But we also get comfortable with certain levels of discomfort. And so if we live in a swamp our whole life, the whole idea of being in a clear lake, it seems ludicrous. It seems crazy. Like, what do you mean? No, this is just how it is. Like, you hear people say this, and maybe you've said it yourself. No, this is how life is, or how I am, or whatever. Anytime you start making those statements, the ego is at work. You can absolutely be sure of that. Anytime you make those statements, it's a time to be curious. It's like, why do I think that life is just like this? There's a lot of ways to view life. So I have 4 steps that I put in the link below the sign-up form, and I've talked about this before with letting go. And I still don't really want you to think of this as too much of an action. It's going to seem more like acting to let go than it actually is. As I said, the action that you're taking is so unconscious, it's just already there. There's already an action been taken to hold on to the romantic partner, to the child, to your parent, to your friend, to your business, to your business partner, to your coworkers, to your employee, right? There's so many things we're holding on to. Ideas and more ideas and more ideas. We're holding on to so many of those. And those should all be given away to going out of business sales for ideas. We have too many of them. They just don't really serve us. And ideas should serve us. Too often we use beliefs to kind of punish ourselves or punish others, to make ourselves be a certain way. Like the belief that you should be attractive. Right? This is an idea that many people are punishing themselves with to try and fit this idea rather than having an idea serve them. So we start to identify these things. Right? That's step 1. So if we don't know it's there, if we're ignorant to it, or if we're ignoring it entirely, then there's no way to really engage with an issue. It's just invisible. So you just start by identifying what are these things in life that you're holding on to. Are you holding on to a sense of safety? Are you holding on to a relationship? Are you holding on to a job? Holding on intrinsically has this fearful quality to it. Doesn't mean in life that we don't make strong connections with people, but a strong connection that's more natural, arising, that's true to us and true to the other person and true to the situation that we're in, tends to take care of itself more. One of the hallmarks I've seen in my own life with holding on is that it requires a lot of energy and it gives back very little. And so you just feel like everything's falling apart in your hands. You're stacking marbles in the corner, right? You know, the sand is running through your fingers. You just can't get a hold of, can't keep it working. If you can't keep something working, a lot of times it means the universe is not on your side. As always, I can't overgeneralize because life is infinite and generalizations are themselves ideas and beliefs that may or may not serve, right? But this is why I'm always talking about listening to your inner knowing. And as a quick kind of aside that I usually do for those of you who are new, listening to your inner knowing in a webinar like this is important too. And your inner knowing, when it resonates, it can feel good or bad, right? Sometimes the things I'll say will upset the ego and tell you to believe something, and other times it will feel good. And so listening to your inner knowing is important to finding your way through all of this, just in this webinar. So part of identifying too is noticing these things inside that want to believe life is a certain way, as opposed to just seeing what's in front of you. And the spiritual path is actually very simple. You just see what's there. What is happening right now? I think so much of morality is misunderstood because I think morality shows itself in the present moment rather than having the belief that things should happen a certain way at a certain time and so on, and what's right or wrong. Because many of you, I think, are wise enough to know that right and wrong is not a simple thing. And we are given such crazy situations sometimes that there is no clear right or wrong, and then your morality leaves you kind of cold and alone in the night. It's like, well, can't handle that. And I'm sure later on we can think about, new ways to view something that happened, but in the present moment, it wasn't there. In the present moment, being with your own truth is so critical, because then it's like, this is what needs to happen. So sometimes you're going to be noticing some of these morality beliefs that are hiding out, and you're going to have to question those too. It's like, where are these coming from? Do they serve the present moment, or are they serving some other motive that I haven't looked at before? Many of you are what I would call religious refugees, that you grew up in a certain spiritual tradition and it just didn't work. And a lot of it is because some of those traditions have been corrupted by ideas that are meant to keep people scared and keep people giving money to institutions to keep them around. Right? It becomes about power and not about freedom. And power and control, and using fear as those tools. The more free you are in yourself from your own ideas and your own beliefs and your own pain, the less fear can be used against you, the less you can be controlled and manipulated. So there is a lot on the line in learning how to let go of these things. So as you identify what's there, the next step really is just to accept that you have this belief, you have this pain, you have whatever it is you're discovering inside yourself. Now this seems like it would have to come with the whole identification thing, but there's plenty of times when people identify something and then they don't accept it. If somebody says, well, sure, my sister-in-law's, got cigarettes, but, it's not a problem, right? And so it's not accepting that this sister-in-law is an addict to cigarettes. This happens all the time, and in so many different ways where people see something and then they deny, no, that can't be happening, or no, this isn't true. And it's like, but it is. People do it. They get in a car wreck. And then they're just saying, this couldn't have happened, right? This can't be happening. But it is. And so that rejection inhibits their ability to engage meaningfully and mindfully with what's going on. Rejection is a blinding thing. Same way that ignorance is a form of blindness. Right? There's all a lot of blindness. Just not seeing what's right in front of our noses. And so often as people go down this path, they release more issues, they open up to their own truth and the clarity. They start to see things going on in life that were always going on, but they never saw them before. It's like, how could this beautiful thing be here, this beautiful friendship, this beautiful opportunity, this beautiful romantic part? How could I have not seen that? Right? You hear these phrases. Maybe you use some of these phrases. So you identify and then you accept. And then you do this next step, which I call embrace. And especially with pain, say it's an old trauma, it's an old moment where you're upset with like an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. It's, there's this quality of discomfort to what you've identified, you've accepted. And then the embrace comes, just to breathe through it, to allow whatever that pain is or that realization to really settle, to really be understood, to be expressed, to be processed in your body. Every one of these things is different. If it's just like a mental realization, a lot of times you just, and identify, accept, embrace, let go goes like this, right? It just goes boom, right there. But then some of these other things where like maybe you were teased as a kid for being fat, right? And that stuck, and it just stayed inside and it fueled everything else that went on, whether it was going out of control into obesity or whether it was overreacting and just constantly counting every calorie, anorexia, eating disorders, or it's getting in the gym constantly. Right? That one moment has been defining your whole life. And so letting go of that moment brings with the reward of huge releases and changes in perspective and opportunities that you can't even imagine right now, because that core fear drives this. It's like, no, I can't let go of the calorie counting. No, I can't get out of the gym. Otherwise, okay, wait, right? It's still that deep-rooted fear of being made fun of that happened in third grade. And so when you embrace that moment as it comes up, whether it's in your head or your heart, or if it's coming out of the body, because the body releases these things. It's the physical tensions hold so much emotion, so many different things. And so a lot of what I do is help people relax into their bodies so these old tensions, emotions, and memories come up. And when they start to come up, And it's usually not on your schedule, so it will be inconvenient. Inconvenient to the ego self. And in its own perfect timing to the divine self, of course. You know, you're in the middle of a board meeting and these things start coming up, right? Then just excuse yourself for a bathroom break. And actually some of my students have learned to do those types of things. But that embrace comes and you start to feel that pain of being a third grader. You start to feel how the shame of what was being projected at you by all the other kids. And at some point, as you usually just breathe and relax, it's nothing particularly special. You can embrace it in a lot of different ways, like journaling and other things, talking to a friend. But at a certain point, something lets go as you relax into it. Right? The embrace of the pain, of the discomfort, is the doorway to letting go. Usually people try to shoot right past. Identify, accept, jump, let go, right? You know, just try to skip that part. It's like, I don't want to feel bad to let go. I know a lot of times you won't, but other times you will. And it's usually pain that we have to work through. There's not as much unexpressed joy in people. Every now and then there is. That tends to happen more with people who've been battling depression, that they've never felt good enough to feel their own joy. So actually there's a lot of leftover joy from childhood and other places because they just never felt like they could express it. So that can come up from time to time. But it's much more typical that the things that we traditionally consider uncomfortable are just what's stuck inside, and that's the pain of a whole host of things. So that's just kind of very simply how I try to break it out to make letting go kind of have a certain level of context. But as I said before in the very beginning, it's so important to start to understand, how do we hold on? What are our mechanisms for holding on to things? And you'll notice, like, the brain just is kind of a function of where we put attention. A lot of times people are just kind of practicing in their head, oh, I'm still mad at mom, or oh, I'm still mad at my boss, right? And so what are you doing? You're holding on and you're putting in tons and tons of energy to remember that you're angry at them. Anger and fear and these things actually take a lot of energy. That's why we can feel so renewed when we release something, because we stop putting tons of energy into this loop in the mind and the clenching in the body and all the ways that we physiologically, emotionally, energetically, and mentally hold on. We're just so used to it, we don't realize the cost. So what are some ways that we hold on? I'll just mention there's the mental looping that we do, where we have an idea and we just keep remembering it, keep remembering it, keep remembering it. And that kind of builds up other feedback loops inside. So like with fear, if you remember that you're scared of, say, walking down a certain street because you heard about something that happened there once, then you're telling your body through your mind to keep producing those chemicals. And sometimes what happens is we break one loop, the other loop keeps going for a while, that you're just irrationally scared, even though you're not thinking about this particular place as being scary to you anymore. But you've built in this emotional loop inside. So now you have to breathe into that. And of course, emotions aren't just ideas. If they're just ideas, they wouldn't bother us. There's a physiological, biochemical impact, right? It's going on. The things that we call joy and things that we call fear are actually, for the most part, as far as I understand, neurotransmitters and hormones. And so those things, to me, in my experience, become kind of the big feedback loops that keep going around and around. So you're no longer mentally afraid of something, but the fear inside keeps going. And so the encouragement is actually still very simple. It's to keep breathing in and to relax again, right? To build a new response to fear. And that's a big deal in general. Most of the times, we all just fall back into the three basic, or it's 3 or 4, depending on who you talk to, basic functions of the animal body when something feels upsetting, right? Fight, flight, freeze, and some people add in faint. And that's really where we go. So to create this new process inside, I think is actually evolutionarily a big deal, and it's brand new. To say that if somebody were to point a gun at your face, that you would just breathe in and relax to come to the best decision possible what to do in that situation. If you just let the instinctual body, it will just do its thing, which may or may not be particularly good. Fighting instinct only works particularly well, I think, if you know actually how to fight. You're more likely to get yourself in more trouble with those instincts rather than being able to relax and feel the truth of the moment. And that, of course, is an edge case. That's a highly charged moment. But there are plenty of other ways where, like, say you're in a difficult discussion with your boss, right? And so these old processes kick in, and so you either want to run away or avoid the situation or fight back to your boss, right, verbally speaking, as opposed to breathing in and relaxing and opening up and saying, how can I respond to this in a different way? So letting go of these deeper issues and practicing these relaxation techniques has huge repercussions for your future. So much of what's going on is people are dictated who they are by their past, and that will also dictate their future, where they're going, and they kind of keep building new layers of pain, right? It's like sediment in the earth. So we just become this huge geological dig in the spiritual work that a lot of us do to try and unearth all the old pain and all the old crap that we've layered on. And the relaxation part also stops the layering. Because difficult things are going to continue to happen no matter how spiritual you are. You're not going to get out of the difficulty of living a human life. If for some reason you simply develop cancer, not through any fault of your own, I think there's this other idea running around the spiritual world that we can be free of all disease. That's not necessarily everybody's path. And so perhaps you've been eating wonderfully and taking care of yourself and you still develop cancer. But that's a difficult thing. So how do you breathe in and relax into that and allow it to just be a part of your life now and do what you need to do without turning this into a new trauma, a new thing that's upsetting you that if you survive then creates more fear about what comes back and right? You know, there's all these different things that we can rebuild new pain into ourselves and add on. If anyone has any questions like that, you're welcome to add it to the chat pod. Along with that identifying of different issues, it's important to see what is your commitment to holding on. What are you trying to be? Who are you trying to be? What are you trying to get? Because that underlying commitment is going to kind of run up right against the whole letting go, because you'll start to say, well, you know, I can't let go of this or else this. Something bad will happen to my kids. I won't earn enough money to take care of myself. I won't. Right? There are hidden threats, and that's part of the reason we hold on so much. You know, if we don't know what those are, then we can't really deal with what's being held on. Right? We have to make the spiritual path more than just a simple little mantra or a happy affirmation that we say to make ourselves feel good. And we have to go beyond just the mind. The mind is not enough. Right? There's a whole heart and body down here in spirit. And there's a whole lot more than the human brain and mind going on in the world. There are a lot of forces at work. So appreciating the whole universe of stuff happening inside of you, I think, lends itself to a certain level of humility and inquisitiveness that I find the further I go on the spiritual path, the more I'm like, how the heck do I work? You know, just even physiologically, there's so much I don't know. I think the neuroscience is currently one of the things that's kind of interesting to me, because I'm just like, well, how in the world is this brain working? You know, what happens when we let go of an issue? Is part of that just like we've broken down like a bundle of synapses and neurons that were all enmeshed together, you know, that was firing all these thoughts in certain ways? Because I'm sure plenty of you know like how your brain works and kind of gets in these loops of thoughts that go over again and again and again. Right? But then there are ways where we break out of that. We break free of that, and so the brain stops doing that. So it seems pretty obvious. It seems pretty plausible. And something happened physiologically in the brain that's responding to this work. So these are things that I get curious about, because I want to know what I'm holding on to, and I want to let it go. If you have an example of something that you find difficult to let go of, you're welcome to put that in the chat pod. It's okay if you can just breathe and relax into yourself. We all need to make more spaces for silence. How about I was thinking about the relationship between letting go and grieving and not grieving. I don't think we take enough time to suffer grief. I think I agree with that if we say we don't take enough time to suffer grief mindfully. I think plenty of people allow sadness to rule themselves and rule their lives and get lost into that. That's kind of a well of emotion that can drag people down to depression. So on that level, there's certain things that we just need to learn how to be with and let that sadness rise up and rise out. And there's so many ways that our mind also loops with that, where it's like, oh, this person shouldn't have died, or I shouldn't have lost this relationship. It's usually around a lot of loss, right? Loss is that fear that's kind of part of the things that are behind the holding on, right? Because there's a sense that if we lose things, we won't be safe, we won't be taken care of, we'll be in jeopardy in some way. To me, it seems very simple to be part of this whole fear of dying, that we need all this stuff to like keep ourselves safe. There are certain things in life to grieve. Right? There's sadness that comes, and there's nothing to resist with that. And that's a big aspect also of moving forward more mindfully in life, is to resist nothing. Now, what do we mean by resist nothing? We don't mean we just let people walk all over it. I mean, we don't resist the reality in front of us. If there's a marching angry horde of people in front, we don't resist the truth that there's a marching angry horde of people in front of us. We say, okay, so this is what's here. How do I be with that? So whether it's sadness and grief or anger or fear, we just stop resisting what's sitting in front of us. We just say, this is what's here. And then you can engage with it more mindfully. And mindfully engaging with grief is really just, once again, being more like the blue sky and just breathing, and these clouds of sadness come up and they come up. And then we watch for the mind. If the mind is trying to get involved in saying that something should be a certain way, so we kind of step out of that again. You take another breath. That's been the metaphor for the last couple of weeks that I've been sharing with all my students, is take an extra breath. Whenever things are really getting difficult, take that extra breath and let go. And take another breath and let go. It's once you get to that point where you think you can't take it anymore, you take that extra breath and then something finally lets go. And that lets go because you're letting go of your attention towards it, of your interest in it. So long as we're interested in something, the brain will keep going round and round in circles. Hi, Yvonne. Thanks for your question, though. Yvonne asks, I've had many losses recently, my job, my dad, my marriage, and a few friendships. How do I manage letting go of these things without resisting? Thank you for the question. Well, I think it always starts with, why do you need them? See, the wonderful truth of the spiritual path is you are. It's just so simple. It's just you are. And we can add on you are beautiful, you're wonderful, you're divine, right? And all these different things. But just the very fact that you are is pointing towards your completeness. And most people move to life with a sense of incompleteness, not good enough. So when we move from that space, everything else around us is also about trying to complete us in some way, to add things in so that we'll feel good again. So that's where a lot of the resistance typically comes from for us, It's this sense that we're not good enough. And so when you start to peel away these other things that have been around us, in some respects, or it's just been our morphine, a way to kind of get through to numb the pain that we feel, then that pain is revealed in all its glory, and we just feel howling hurt. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't other issues going on. I mean, your father, that's a huge issue, you know, between parents and children and jobs, you know, hit the resources and the finances and the general sense of safety, right? So there's a lot of big issues that happen inside. But in so many respects, it's once again coming from the space that we're incomplete. And we need something external to complete us. And if we don't have it, then we should feel bad, right? There's actually a belief that says, no, we should feel bad about these things. But we have nothing in this life. We don't even have our bodies. All of this stuff is going to be taken from us anyway. And so often things are taken from us so something else new can come. As some of you know, I lost my apartment because of a fire that had nothing to do with me. Right? That space was taken from me, and I no longer even live in California. Right? There's been a lot of big changes. Things have been moved from my life. There's a different space now for something else. And when something else is here, it's here. And for a while, something else will go away again. And this is just part of life, that things come and go to us. And letting go is the only mindful thing we can really do, because everything else is going to lead to more and more suffering if we try to make life not change, which ultimately is one of the truths that's behind letting go, that we understand that life is going to change. And letting go, by the way, isn't giving up. It's not quitting. It's not being non-committal. Right? That some people can kind of skew this all the way on the other side of things. Because I tend to be a person with very strong commitments, I don't tend to think about that as much. But there are people out there that, you know, are just letting go as an avoidance to difficult work and difficult situations. And the spiritual path is not an avoidance of difficult situations, because those are as equally a part of life as anything else. Let me know if that was helpful, Yvonne, and thank you for your question. Hi, Pam. Is my underlying general anxiety due to fear generated by my beliefs and ideas? If so, how can I identify the beliefs and ideas causing the fear? Thanks for the question. I would say that first you just have to sit with the anxiety and let it talk to you, which is not a whole lot of fun, I understand. But that's part of, you know, our self-inquiry, that we have to know ourselves. It could be a lot of beliefs and ideas. There's probably some of them in there somewhere. If there's old pain of some kind, you know, whether physical trauma or emotional trauma, that could be in there. There's a lot of things that can underlie it. With something that's more general anxiety, it's probably a whole bunch of things. So this is why having that regular practice with meditation to calm down enough to get out of the busyness that might mask anxiety. Because part of what we do right now in Western culture is we stay so busy that we can't feel other tensions inside. That's why I do so much relaxation with my students. It's like I have to get them down to the ground in their body, out of the clouds of activity. Because it's kind of like also an ocean. Or you could probably use the atmosphere, like there's different currents at different levels. And so if we're only in the top currents, it's all frothy and you can't get a sense of what's going on. But a lot of what's going on top is being caused by what's underneath. So really, I won't go into too much more detail with that, because the next step, Pam, is for you to relax even more into the anxiety, to sit with it, breathe into it, and consciously relax the body. And see what happens. Where do you find hidden tensions in your body? Because all those hidden tensions are holding old memories and old pain. And that's, you know, closer to the source of what some of the anxiety is actually about. I hope that's helpful. Thanks for the question, Pam. Hi, Kyle. Kyle says, I find it difficult to let go of the fear that arises when I attempt to enter deeper spaces of awareness with another human being or beings. There's a large part of me that believes that the other person will not be able to handle those deeper spaces, and that I won't know how to navigate us through the mutual fear and pain that may arise. I sometimes feel stuck between not being able to handle interactions based on denial and not wanting to bring the interaction down to a level of mutual fear and pain without knowing how to walk through it mindfully. Thanks for the comment, Kyle. And I do appreciate what you're saying. You know, it's another one of our challenges. It's how do we let go of where people are? Right? People are going to continue to be in fear and react from fear. regardless of what any of us do. Maybe we'll have some positive impacts here and there. I like to think I occasionally do. But the fact of the matter is this is just the state of human nature right now. And we can say it has to do with karma. We can say it has to do with biology and the animal instinctual body, once again, that really is operating off of those core thoughts, or not even thoughts, core instincts of kill it, run from it, or like not necessarily kill it, but fight it off, run from it, freeze, or faint/play dead, right? These things are very real inside other people. But I think, we always have to keep investigating ourselves. It's like, what are my other fears? What does it mean that other people won't be able to handle it? How is that a threat to you? Because, sometimes what we find is just these deeper levels of fear around our own emotions, that we're going to feel something that's uncomfortable, that we don't like. And we want to control the other people around us, potentially, so that everybody feels good, even though we don't know what other people are feeling. So that everybody usually means so that we feel good, and then we kind of project ourselves onto others. And if you're really concerned that somebody can't handle these things, then why are you connecting to them in this way? And I think that's a really important thing to also investigate, because sometimes we're wanting friends to continue on a spiritual journey with us, and that's not where they're going. So if they really can't handle whatever these deeper spaces are, Kyle, then you kind of have to ask yourself, well, is there a reason I'm inviting them in? Should I be making space for somebody else? Because that's part of the letting go that I can't emphasize enough. Letting go is making a space as well. And it kind of seems to be that we human beings kind of have a limited amount of space in our lives, right? That we can have only so many kind of friends and family members and jobs and things like that, and that's it. And so when we let something go, we're actually also making space for something else to enter. Sometimes what enters is just more space. And this is an important lesson in human life right now, to be comfortable with space, with free time. Because we are incredibly not okay with that, because we've been taught to not be okay with it. We've been taught that we're not enough by ourselves. We've been taught that we need to be constantly busy doing things to be productive, and on and on and on. And so sometimes when you let somebody go, all you get is more space. I got a lot more space for several years. Whereas I let people go and there's just more space, and I was getting used to more spaciousness. Like, this is what it's like to be at peace with yourself without needing other people. Let me know if that was helpful, Kyle. You're welcome. Hi, Tamara. I think I try to control things around me because of fear of lack or trust. How can I let go of control and still feel safe and okay? Well, once again, that feeling of safety, that's the thing you want to investigate. What is that? What do you mean? I mean, if you're trying to achieve one sort of feeling all the time in the human experience, that's not possible. That's not how the human body is. It's like our emotions are always in motion. That may be the quote for the night. I've used it before, but our emotions are always in motion. So safety is largely kind of a feeling, kind of a combination, in my opinion, between the body being relaxed and the emotions being in a certain state of contentment, whatever that may be. So if that's not actually something that you can really keep, it shows how much work we put into control that's going to ultimately fail us. And the thing around control, too, is that is a kind of fear. And that fear tends to make us upset more. It actually doesn't really make us feel safe and okay. It usually makes us feel like we're holding on for dear life. That we just kind of keep holding on to make it all work. So I definitely encourage you, Taylor, to investigate what you're scared of, what you're not trusting. And I also encourage you to investigate, what these feelings of safety are, because I think that's just so important to understand what you're trying to achieve in yourself. So I think those are important starting points. I hope that's helpful. Hi, Lau. Can I say something, Yvonne? I think letting go involves a lot of crying. Please do it. Your tears will wash away the pain day by day, step by step. Well, once again, I think it has to be mindful. Like, if we can drop in the space of witnessing, allowing the tears to come up, then yes. But other times, that's a downward spiral. A lot of people will drop into that crying and they will go down the well of sadness. I spend a certain amount of time when I work with different students living in the well of sadness that they've created for themselves. And it can be a long, hard journey to get out. Because once again, when we start to do certain patterns inside our brains and our bodies, we start to build up these loops that say, this is how I should feel. These are the emotions and hormones that my individual wants. So we have to be mindful about how our mind is working, how our emotions are working, to be in that space of witnessing, to allow grief to come up and to come out. And then if we do it that way, then what Lao is saying is absolutely true, that yes, this rain will come and it will pass. And once again, that's a space of letting go, of just allowing things to process. And processing is one of those words I use a lot. You know, the processing is that space of experiencing while letting go of the experience. So that to me is, you know, non-duality and duality. Non-duality is a space of oneness, that witness, where we just see and express and experience all as it is. And duality is like human experience, that we'll be doing whatever it will be doing. You're welcome, Taryn. Thanks for the comment, Lau. What other thoughts or questions do people have, especially anybody who hasn't had a chance to ask anything? I have about 10 minutes left to go. I'm always afraid of losing stuff, aren't we? You know, one of the fun practices in letting go, if you're early in your spiritual practice, is go into your closets and get rid of clothes you don't wear, and see how that goes. I've grieved, and in the space that I have been allotted, I have been able to peel back to the root of many of my issues. This journey has been amazing now that I have awakened to my true self. And it's beautiful. While people are thinking of any other questions I'd like to ask, just a reminder for those who weren't here at the very beginning that this whole thing runs on donations. It's a free webinar, but if you felt moved to donate, here's the donation button on the whole blog. And all your donations are greatly appreciated. Yeah, we think the resources and things and relationships will keep us feeling good. But that's what feeling safe is also often interpreted as. We just think it's going to make us feel good. It's like, well, it usually gives us a little bit of a contentment for a brief amount of time, and then it's gone. The human experience is always changing. It's just how it is. But as I said, you know, kind of breaking it down to the identify, accept, embrace, let go. That I think has helped people. It helps you appreciate some of these things that happen inside. And as I also said, you know, looking at that whole way that we hold on to things, why we hold on to things, and how we think that's helping us is really, really important. And of course, you're going to end up in childhood because your parents or your initial living situation through your formative years, whatever they may be, set the foundation for how you think and what you think is possible and how you think you should feel, along with the genetics that are in the situation. So you have to get back to that foundation. You're going to have to break out of some of those deep issues to expand what you can build on top of that foundation, to create a broader foundation. Too often people start to build back too early on their spiritual journeys, and they haven't gone deep enough to that space that's just truly free, that doesn't need any foundation, doesn't need to build anything. But if you do build something, then you do it because it's your joy. And you build it like a sandcastle. And the sandcastle is one of my favorite metaphors because when we build a sandcastle, we know we're not going to keep it. We know the ocean's going to come wreck it. That's just how it is. But you don't build a sandcastle, you know, or you don't worry about that, right? You build it because it's fun. You don't build it because you think it's going to last. So on a more fun note, I want to point you towards that as you learn to let go of these old sandcastles you built, that you're going to lose them anyway. Now you have an opportunity to build a different one and have fun with that and build it from that space that you know you're going to let it go. I won't be a spiritual teacher forever. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. The only times I don't enjoy this work is when I'm tired because something else is going on in my life. It doesn't have to do with the work I'm actually doing. I love that part. Hi, Julia. I've been trying to let go of calorie counting recently and have made a lot of progress, but I think the numbers still work at a subconscious level. I want to completely let go, but even when I try not to think about them, they come up. Should I just give it time? Yeah, I would give it time and, lots of self-love, because ultimately the whole calorie counting thing is about how you look. And breaking through the big, horrible issue that this Western society has given women around, valuing you based how you look. Well, it's not even just Western society. Plenty of other societies value women for how they look, like the whole foot binding in China in like the 19th century before, because for some reason small feet were sexier. It doesn't make sense to me because that's not the ethics of my society, right? The ethics of the society or for women is a whole other set of things around the boobs and the ass and how the thin tummy and all that sort of craziness. So I definitely encourage you, if you haven't already, Julia, to write down all the different beliefs that are going on in your head around what you should look like. And it's not hard to find out where the negative reinforcement is coming from. You can look at the internet, ads on TV, you can look at magazines, right? There's so many other different ways where the reflections we keep getting back to us say, this is what you should be. And we believe them. So I think if you can get deeper into that issue, it's going to help you out a lot more, because the calorie counting to me is like further up on the top of the weed, and you can cut off the top of the weed and it kind of keeps growing back. So the further down you can get to the roots of these things, and then there's no need to worry about the calorie counting because you just won't think about it, because you're not going to be caught up in the crap that's been thrown at Western women. And more men are getting caught up in the superficiality in a whole other way, which sucks. Like how do we begin to let go of things which feel not only intrinsic to our personal identities, but to our society as well, i.e. gender? I have seen within spiritual communities so much openness and emotional embrace, but something like a gender transition still appears to remain taboo and brings up discomfort, even to the most seemingly open of humans. I'm not sure, are you asking about is society going to come to terms with it? Because I don't know about that. I think that's going to take a lot more change, but if you're talking about your own, embracing of your gender identity, that's a little bit different. And so in that sense, yeah, you have to look at your personal identity and what you think is appropriate for yourself. Not entirely sure how to engage with the question, because ultimately we can do whatever we want with our bodies. And I always encourage people that make sure that whatever you're doing is from a space of love. I think there can be, much like anything else, this drive towards being something so we'll feel better, that there's this idea that if we look a certain way or sound a certain way, that we'll eventually be happy with ourselves. So I think that's something else I would add into, making a gender transition, depending on what you mean, because a lot of times people are trying to feel better again, once again, to feel safe. And this is just the latest rendition of that. Now, if it's just something general that they feel true, a man dressing as a woman, a woman dressing as a man, something is more simple like that, as opposed to going through the physical transitions, then that's fine, right? It's your body. You can do whatever you want with it. But coming to peace with yourself and to looking at all these different issues is, just part of the things that you have to do for yourself, I guess. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's just fundamentally I have to take that back to, is this coming from a space of self-acceptance that you're just doing it from a space of love, or is there a rejection that you think you're going to be happier and better if you look or sound a different way? Because to me that spans a lot of different issues that go on with people, where we think if we're just a different way, then life will be better. And that's not necessarily the case. If we're not happy with ourselves, changing the external experience and external appearance, we'll just bring contentment for a while, then there'll be more unhappiness about something else. I hope that was helpful. think we're winding down here for tonight. I appreciate everybody who's commented, asked questions. I hope I, answered them in a way that was helpful. You're welcome to always send me questions at Gmail. My Gmail account, as many of you know, or through the contact form. You're welcome, Yvonne. You're welcome, Lyle. You're welcome, Julie and Pam, Aaron. So I think this will do it for tonight, and I'll try to get back into the rhythm every 2 weeks, and usually the next one will be at 10:30 a.m. because, I want to give my friends in Europe a chance to join and not be, waking up in the middle of the night. Have a beautiful night, everybody.